Hello there.
Star Wars is known for a lot of things. It is known for the Jedi and the Sith. It is known for thousands of planets, and it is also known for its zombie virus. But unlike most zombie viruses, the virus in Star Wars wasn't made out of science, but instead was made out of Sith alchemy that was thousands of years old. The virus is so contagious that within an hour of it infecting the first person, everybody aboard the ship was already infected or killed. And that is even before the zombies came to life. As you all know, today is Halloween, so first of all, happy Halloween. Second of all, I will be making a special Halloween edition video about the Blackwing virus. But before we get on to the video, you know I gotta talk about its backstory. As I've mentioned earlier, the virus is not made out of a scientific means, but rather a Sith alchemy. We believe it dated back all the way to 4645 BBY, where it all started with a Sith lord known as Dathomir. Among all of the ingredients that was used to conduct this virus was a Murakami black orchid, which was extremely self-aware and was force-sensitive, which was an extremely self-aware and force-sensitive plant who was powerful enough to even communicate with other force-sensitive beings. But just adding those ingredients together wouldn't be enough for the virus to be successful. In order for it to work, a living host would had to be used as an incubator to produce the necessary liquids to sustain the virus after it was floating around in the body. And like most Sith, the original intent was to grant the Sith Lord immortality. But as you can imagine, the experiment would be unsuccessful and would lead to his downfall and eventual death. But before he would die, he would put all of his knowledge into a holocron, where it should have remained, until one day, a Sith Lord would uncover it around 1,000 years later. Darth Sabros would attempt to make the same experience as Darth Dreer, believing that he would be more successful and would not make the same mistakes. But, just like the attempt before, it would lead to failure. But unlike the last time, it would take down more than just one Sith Lord, but instead would take down his entire Sith Academy, turning everybody on that planet into a mindless zombie. And there, the secrets would lay dormant for another 3,000 years, until the Galactic Empire led by Darth Vader would discover it, and would order the Imperial scientists to weaponize it. But not for the reasons you may think, because instead of using it for immortality, he would actually use it as a weapon against rebels or other threats that might oppose the Empire. This is how it would gain its name, the Imperial bioweapon I-71A, but it would later be changed to Project Blackwing. And all of these experiments would consist aboard a Star Destroyer that would be kept piloting around the outer rim in uncharted space and unknown regions. And it was kept extremely confidential, and with very few knowing the actual mission of the Star Destroyer. It would be on the Star Destroyer that they would perfect the virus on 2 human hosts, and would even go as far as making it capable of becoming an airborne pathogen, a mistake that would prove far more deadlier than anyone could have anticipated. Unfortunately, they would fail to see the threat that they had brought upon themselves, because after stormtroopers have mishandled some of the cargo, the virus would leak out and infect those stormtroopers. And while the stormtroopers might have been caught and put in quarantine as fast as they could, they would not stop the inevitable from happening. Eventually, the engines and power would shut off, making containing the virus all the more difficult. But while they were still studying the virus, and they would also realize that some people were immune to it, and quickly created probably the fastest cure known to a zombie apocalypse. But unfortunately, they lacked all the proper resources and materials to create enough of the cure. Eventually, the undead would become too much, and those immune would spend their last moments protecting those who weren't. Although some survivors managed to board a ship and tried to escape, to their horror, they realized that the undead were smarter than they thought and found a way to control the ship and activated its tractor beam, which drew the survivors aboard, where they would be trapped there for 10 weeks, unfortunately resorting to cannibalism to survive. To show how bad it was, there was around 30 survivors on that shuttle, and afterwards there would be only 7 left, and thus the horrors will continue, which is where our story starts. As the now abandoned Star Destroyer drifted through space, or drawing many ships that happened to draw too close to it, including an Imperial prison barge known as the Purge. Unfortunately for the barge, the tractor beam not only drew their ship in, but also damaged their engines, meaning they had almost no way to escape. After the party entered the destroyer, the virus had already become airborne, and unfortunately due to that, when what remained of the 2 parties returned, they brought back the virus with them. But due to the scanner showing no disease aboard the Star Destroyers, the higher-ups just assumed it was a food poisoning, and sent them to the medbay, where it would be in this medbay where Dr. Zahara Cody and her B1 surgical droid named Waste would discover that it was not a food poisoning at all, but instead a virus. And as this infection continued, more and more of the prisoners and employees among the Purge would become infected. Dr. Cody realized that she would be one of the very few who was immune to it, and wasted no time trying to create an antivirus. But the cure would come all too late, because at the time of her trying to process the cure, nearly everybody aboard the Purge has already died or was near death. But it wouldn't come to a complete waste of time, because she would manage to save 2 very important rebels. And of course, the 2 rebels I'm talking about are of course Han Solo and his lovable Wookiee companion Chewbacca. It would actually be their cell that prevented them from being infected, due to it having a different way of letting air flow in, meaning that it kept away any of the airborne virus and the undead. Eventually, Han and Chewbacca and Dr. Cody would meet up with the other 2 survivors, known as Trig and Kale, and after barely managing to escape escape the ship, they would come to the shocking revelation that there was other ships aboard the Star Destroyer, and they're all being piloted by the undead to take off. But luckily, the undead aboard the ships could not jump into hyperspace due to them becoming dormant after being away from the airborne virus for too long, meaning that there was one weakness to the undead, even if it was a small one. But unfortunately, one ship would manage to escape and crash land on a planet we're all too familiar with now, Dathomir. This virus would then infect multiple creatures, including a Rancor. It'd be at this point where the Galactic Empire would actually get involved, wiping out anyone who might have been infected by it, including a Night Sister clan. Although, as strong as the Night Sisters were, only 3 among the entire clan would manage to slow down the infection. Even with their Night Sister magic, no matter how powerful they were, would eventually succumb to the disease, joining the undead. But back aboard the Star Destroyer, Trig, Kale, Dr. Cody, Han, and Chewbacca would decide to do the one thing that was never a good idea: split up, with Dr. Cody looking over Kale due to him being recently bitten by a zombie. Eventually, after the group left, Kale would succumb to the disease and would die due to him being shot in the head. And as the rest were looking for a way off the Star Destroyer, it would later be revealed that a general of the Purge known as Sartoris was also caught in the Star Destroyer's tractor beam and pulled back aboard the ship. After leaving the escape pod, he would manage to make his way to an Imperial shuttle, where he would find out that there were 7 other surviving members aboard that ship. There, Sartoris would head to the command center and turn off the tractor beam, hoping to escape, but at the cost of one of the survivors dying to the zombies. Around the same time, Dr. Cody would be making her way around the Star Destroyer and eventually find herself in the Star Destroyer's lab. It would be there that she discovered about the Project Blackwing. And also at the same time, Han, Chewbacca, and Trig would make their way to the control panel, and after realizing that most of the panels were already destroyed, would find one semi-working control panel. But after a horde of zombies found out where they were, they'd be forced to split up again, with Han and Chewbacca going one way and Trig another. It'd be then that Trig is reunited with his brother. Unfortunately, it would be not the one he remembered, and would be forced to kill him. And after barely managing to escape the main reactor shaft with the help of Sartoris, Sartoris would sacrifice himself to save Trig, Han, and Chewbacca, due to the shuttle they were on not being strong enough to hold all of their weight. It'd be at that moment that they realized that the undead seemed to have a hive mind, due to them working together to pilot ships and loading the gray goo aboard the ships to infect the rest of the galaxy. Eventually, Han, Chewie, Trig, and Dr. Cody would manage to board the Imperial shuttle again, and as it managed to finally escape the Star Destroyer, there would be one undead left. The undead would jump out and kill 2 of the remaining officers that were aboard the ship, and after being shot in the stomach, the zombie would seem to just collapse and die, but not due to the blaster bolt. It would be there that they realized that they were too far away from the host that they would die out. And besides the part of Dathomir being infected, the virus would die out, never to be seen again so far. It actually has an ending that we're not really familiar with. It has a semi-happy ending, with Han and Chewbacca going off on their own journeys, and Trig following Dr. Zahara Cody. And that, my friends, is the story of one of the most gruesome and horrific events to ever happen to the Galactic Empire in the history of the Star Wars galaxy. To think of what would have happened if the Blackwing virus would have gone to another planet. It would have caused a galactic outbreak, killing trillions. Luckily, though, that did not happen. Thank you so much for watching today's Halloween special. Make sure to like and subscribe. And with that, my fellow Star Wars nerds, may the Force be with you, and have a happy Halloween.